The hall went silent, except for the faint hum of the ceiling lights. Every eye in the room seemed to be locked on the girl standing awkwardly at the center of the polished wooden stage. The microphone, still trembling slightly from the man's playful toss, was now clutched in her hands. She hadn't asked for it. In fact, it felt like the last thing she wanted in that moment. Hundreds of faces staring, waiting, and somewhere in the crowd, muffled laughter rippled like an unkind whisper. Her fingers tightened around the mic, her knuckles white, but she didn't move. Before we continue, if you're watching us for the very first time, ELLIOT Stories welcomes you with a warm hug straight from the heart. Don't just watch, be part of this amazing family. Smash that subscribe button, like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, drop a comment telling us the city or country you're watching from. We love seeing our family from all over the world. Now, back to our story. The man standing a few feet away from her was smiling, too wide to be genuine. His black suit was sharp, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, and his voice carried the kind of charm that could turn a room in his favor. But there was something else behind that smile. Something just a little too amused, as though this moment was meant to be a small joke in the middle of an otherwise serious program. In the front row, a group of students leaned forward, grinning, whispering to each other. A boy in the second row had his phone raised, already recording. The air was thick with a mix of curiosity and expectation. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly, not quite fear, but not confidence either. "Go ahead," the man said softly, but with just enough volume for the audience to hear. "Let's see what you've got." For a long second, she didn't respond. Her eyes scanned the crowd, maybe searching for a friendly face, maybe for the nearest exit. Then, without warning, she took one step forward. It was almost imperceptible, but the entire energy in the room shifted. The whispers faded. A girl in the back row stopped giggling. Even the boy with the phone seemed to hesitate. That small step was like the drawing back of a bowstring, tension ready to snap. She lifted the mic slightly, testing its weight, then adjusted it closer to her mouth. But instead of speaking right away, she let the silence stretch out, long enough to make a few people squirm in their seats. It wasn't shyness anymore. It was something else, something intentional. The man's smile faltered for the briefest second. "Well," he prompted, tilting his head. Her lips parted. The sound that came out wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. Clear. The kind of sound that demands you stop whatever you're doing and listen. In the back corner of the hall, a teacher leaned forward in her seat, her brow furrowing as though she was hearing something familiar but couldn't place it. Another teacher, seated near the door, straightened up, glancing around to see if others were reacting the same way. The girl's voice began to fill the room, not hurried, not hesitant, carrying a tone that seemed to wrap around every ear and hold it captive. You could almost feel the shift in the audience. Shoulders relaxed, whispers died completely, and even the sound of the air conditioner seemed to fade into the background. From somewhere near the center, a boy muttered under his breath, "What is this?" But his voice sounded out of place, jarring against the calm power that was building. The man on stage tried to hide his surprise, but his body betrayed him. His hands, which had been casually resting at his sides, now gripped one another behind his back. His jaw tightened. Still, the girl went on. Her eyes no longer darted around nervously, they were fixed on some invisible point beyond the crowd, as if she wasn't just speaking to them, but to someone, somewhere else entirely. Then, she did something that made the entire front row exchange glances. She closed her eyes. The moment she did, her voice changed. Not in tone, but in depth. There was weight behind it now, like a hidden door had opened. The sound seemed to carry more than just words, it carried intent. Someone coughed nervously. Another shifted in their seat, as though unsure whether to keep watching or look away. The man stepped forward, almost instinctively, as if to interrupt, but something, maybe the way the room was hanging on her every word, kept him rooted to the spot. And then, from the far left side of the hall, a sharp sound rang out, a chair scraping hard against the floor. A student stood abruptly, knocking over his notebook. His eyes were wide, locked on the girl. He didn't look amused anymore. The girl's voice didn't waver. She kept going, as if she hadn't noticed the disruption. But if you looked closely, there was the faintest curl of a smile at the corner of her mouth. The man's eyes flicked toward the boy who had stood up, but the boy was already sitting down again, his face pale. The girl opened her eyes finally, scanning the audience slowly, deliberately, until they landed back on the man. For the first time since the mic was handed to her, the man looked unsettled. She took another step forward. The microphone was steady in her hands now, almost like it belonged there. I think, she began, her voice softer now but somehow sharper, you've heard enough. And just like that, she lowered the microphone. The room erupted, not in laughter this time, but in something harder to define. A mix of applause, murmurs, and the unmistakable rustle of people trying to make sense of what had just happened. The man forced a chuckle, but it landed awkwardly. Well, that was unexpected. The girl didn't respond. She simply handed the mic back and walked toward the side of the stage, her head held high, while the entire room's gaze followed her every step. But what no one in that room could have guessed was that this was only the beginning, and that the events set in motion in those few minutes would ripple far beyond the walls of that auditorium. The echo of the last clap lingered in the air, even as students shuffled in their seats, exchanging wide-eyed glances and hushed whispers. The girl slipped through the side curtains of the stage, disappearing from sight, but her presence seemed to hang over the room like an unshakable scent. The man, now noticeably less composed, turned toward the audience, forcing a smile. Well, wasn't that interesting? His tone was light, but his eyes betrayed something else. He adjusted his tie, glanced toward the stage exit, then continued the program as though nothing unusual had happened. But everyone knew something had happened. Backstage, the girl sat on a folding chair, her back against the cool wall, her fingers still tingling from the feel of the microphone. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't nervous. She was waiting. From the open doorway at the far end of the corridor, a tall woman entered, not a teacher, not a student, but someone in a navy blue coat with an embroidered crest no one in the school had seen before. She moved with purpose, heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. You did well, the woman said simply, stopping just in front of the girl. The girl lifted her eyes slowly. They didn't expect it. No, the woman replied, they never do. Without another word, the woman placed a small card in the girl's palm. No name, just a golden emblem pressed into the paper, a symbol the girl recognized instantly. Her fingers curled around it. Before either could speak again, the sound of footsteps approached. The man in the black suit appeared in the doorway, his easy smile replaced by a taut, controlled expression. I need a word, he said. His voice was calm, but it wasn't a request. The woman stepped aside, letting him approach. What was that? He demanded in a low tone. That wasn't part of the program. The girl tilted her head slightly, watching him. Maybe the program needed changing. His jaw tightened. You think you can just... Sir, the woman interrupted, her voice cool and clipped, you're forgetting who invited her here. The man froze, glancing between them. Something unspoken passed in his eyes, a recognition that this wasn't a conversation he could win. He straightened, forced a thin smile, and muttered, Fine. Just keep it brief next time. Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked out. The girl exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the card in her hand. Brief, she said under her breath, isn't always the point. That afternoon, the buzz around the school was unstoppable. Students replayed clips of her time on stage over and over, sharing them through group chats and whispering about the look on Mr. Hayden's face when she had finished. By evening, the video had escaped the school walls, finding its way onto a social platform. By morning, it had reached tens of thousands of views. People weren't just talking about her voice, they were talking about the way she'd carried herself, the way she'd turned the entire room without raising her volume or losing her composure. But the attention wasn't all kind. Some mocked, others twisted the story, claiming she'd been trying to show up the speaker or acting out of turn. She read every comment without flinching. This wasn't new to her. 2 days later, she received a sealed envelope in her locker. No name, no return address, only the same golden emblem embossed on the back. Inside, a single line was written, the next step awaits. Are you ready? She didn't need to think. She was. That evening, she found herself standing outside a tall, nondescript building on the far edge of the city. The same woman from Backstage met her at the entrance, leading her up a flight of stairs into a dimly lit hall. The room was filled with people, young, old, every shade of skin, every kind of accent. They all turned as she entered, and one by one, they nodded in recognition. You're here because of what you carry, the woman said, her voice echoing in the space. What you spoke on that stage wasn't just sound. It was truth. And truth, when spoken without fear, changes things. Sometimes faster than the world is ready for. The girl felt the weight of those words settle into her chest. You're not here to sing for applause, the woman continued. You're here to speak so that silence has no place to hide. And just like that, she understood. It hadn't been a joke when they handed her that microphone. Not for her. It had been an invitation. An invitation to stand when others expected her to sit, to speak when others hoped she would stay quiet. Weeks later, she would return to that same school for another program. This time, when she stepped onto the stage, there was no awkwardness, no hesitation. The crowd fell silent the moment she appeared, waiting for whatever would come next. She began to speak, and this time, she did not stop until she had finished what she came to say. Her words wove through the room like light through a darkened hall, leaving no corner untouched. When she was done, the applause came like a wave, not forced, not polite, but alive. And in the back of the room, the man in the black suit watched with an unreadable expression. But somewhere deep down, he knew he'd been wrong to underestimate her. Moral lesson: never underestimate the quiet ones. Power doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it walks in softly, takes the mic, and changes everything. Opportunities may come disguised as jokes or challenges, but the way you respond can open doors far beyond the moment. Encouraging word from ELLIOT Stories. No matter who you are or where you're from, your voice has value. Don't wait for permission to use it. When the moment comes, speak with courage, live with purpose, and remember, someone, somewhere, is waiting to hear exactly what only you can say. Keep shining, and never let the world convince you to stay silent.